What happens when your child cannot get out of winter and they just keep escalating and escalating and escalating? Or maybe it's you. Maybe you are just digging a hole and you are going deeper and deeper and deeper into your rage and your fury and your fear and your anxiety. That happens. That happens to everybody at some point. And that's what I call the blizzard. So it is even more intense than a winter storm. It is those places where you go and you are completely flooded. And there's absolutely no way out. There's no rational thinking, there's no planning, there's no, just take 5 breaths. No, it's not about 5 breaths. You might get to 5,000 breaths before you can actually come back to the place that you were. So when we think about blizzards, we can't decide what is a winter storm for our children and what is a blizzard for them. They decide where they go based on the intensity and the force to which they are reacting to an issue. And when they're reacting to an issue, one of the things that we can do as grown-ups is to look at them and start breaking down a little, deconstructing the process and the whole picture. Remember in the last module, we just talked about spotlighting, and when we focus on something, it gets bigger. Sometimes it might feel like it's a sweater and your child doesn't want to wear that sweater, and all of a sudden the entire world has collapsed for them because it's about the sweater. But it really is not about the sweater. Unless there is an itchy situation or there's something about the sweater specifically, chances are it's not about that. It often is about something else. So when we spotlight, we get into these power struggles with our kids. You're putting on that sweater. I'm not putting on the sweater. You put on that sweater. It's not about the sweater. So when you can see the whole picture, it allows you to step back and evaluate all the different components. When we think about where our child is and we look back to some of the things that we might have missed when we spotlight, are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they overstimulated? Right? This happens in our world. We run hard and fast and furious. We are going from this activity to that activity. Even if your child isn't doing the activity, maybe they're there with siblings and they're in the gym where the sibling has the activity, and they're just sitting and waiting, and they're bored and they're frustrated and they're restless. And 2 hours later, all of that pent-up emotion just comes oozing out all over the place, right? So the whole picture is really a power place for us to understand the context to which winter and blizzards happen for our kids. Now, when we think about blizzards for ourselves, we might think it's about certain things, and we could be right or we could be wrong. Some of the typical things that people find themselves in blizzards is fighting and noise. But what it actually is watching power dynamics between siblings, right? So even in that space of, oh my God, sibling rivalry makes me crazy. Let's break down what that looks like. Is there maybe a component of bullying in there? And that is a hot button for you, sending you into like this deep, dark storm of remembering down to your cellular level what it felt like to be bullied, right? So even your hot buttons in a blizzard storm provide so much understanding and growth for you when you pull back the curtain and say, what's really going on there? Other sources of blizzards for us might include punishment-based parenting, right? So if there is a dynamic in your house where two parents are parenting with different styles, that could send you into a blizzard because it might be very misaligned with who you are and what you believe. Your value conflict is hot when you have another parent in your family or another adult in your relationship that has a very different style from you. That is often blizzard worthy. And again, it isn't about necessarily what the action is, it's about the values, right? So it's always a deeper level. Blizzards are never just about snow. It's about temperature and wind and speed and all of those things combined. Communication breakdowns are often a way that blizzards blow through our family. And we're going to get into communication in a number of different ways throughout this course. But for us to say right now in this blizzard storm, we can think about communication as an opportunity to listen and learn. So we think of communication often as speaking. Like, what am I going to say? How do I control this? What do I need to put into their mind? But we have one mouth and two ears, right? So communication really is a circuit. It is a circuit of receiving and giving. And if there's only giving and no receiving, the breakdown will happen. So what happens when you are ready to leave winter? What happens when you say, I am done feeling hurt or being hurtful? I am done hiding from my kids or having them hide from me. I am done having absolute awkward silence during the meals or doing things by myself because nobody is interested in being together. It is a really, really empowering place, and I know that it feels very hard to understand sometimes, but the point at which you say, I'm ready to leave winter, is exactly the place where the next season gets to come. So before we get to that next season, let's review what we learned in winter. In this module, we talked about what winter is for you, right? What does all of this chaos and conflict and confusion do to you personally? And then, of course, we talked about what it does for your child. If your child is old enough, they can do some of these exercises with you. They can talk about what it feels like when they are feeling like they're stuck in a blizzard, when they are in that winter storm, when they don't want to be near you, right? You can have these conversations, and I encourage you to. You know, when my children were very young, we talked about this. We talked about, what does it feel like for you when things are really hard and when you feel really angry with other people in our family? What are you thinking, and how is it showing up in your body, and what does it mean for you? What do you want to do naturally? Do you want to scream and yell and throw things? Do you want to run and hide? Really start digging into their own winter process, because that will only benefit them as they get older. What are some of our hot button issues? So if you have 2 people in your family, you have 2 sets of hot buttons. What if you have 5 children and, 2 step parents? You have almost 10 people with their own collection of hot buttons. That is a lot to navigate. And if you don't know all the different pieces that people bring to the table, it makes life really hard and unpredictable. So having the conversation about things that set you off, having the conversation of those tender, unhealed hurts that you have inside is really important. Knowing how those hot buttons were formed is really instrumental in starting to dismantle what those do for you today. Yes, they could be 4 decades old. Some of my clients have hot buttons from the time they were 3. They are in their 60s, right? It doesn't matter how long ago that seed was planted. When that scar is there, that scar is there. And so looking at it and understanding it and developing a framework to relive it in a way. And if it is a deep, dark, traumatic thing, you might need professional support. And I am all for that. I absolutely believe in getting professional support in terms of working with someone in your faith-based community, a therapist or a counselor of some way. Absolutely pull in the resources that you need. But to look at your hot buttons and to understand where they came from and how they inform your decisions today and their behavior and your behavior today is really valuable as a parent and as a person in any relationship, to know how we evolved to become who we are. That is a process, right? And if we can step back and look at all of the ways that have contributed to the hurts that we have and the winter storms that we feel, it takes a little bit of that temperature, all that frostiness, all that isolation, all of that closing down, it takes that away from us. So we're able to look around and say, it doesn't hold that kind of control over me anymore. It doesn't own me. It doesn't dictate the way that I behave. It does not control my emotions anymore. And you can be free of it, right? To be free of winter is really to be free of some of those things that grew into our hot buttons that kept us very stuck, swirling in negative patterns for a very long time. And it's often our children that reflect back the things that we need to work on. If your child behaves in a way and you're like, babe, don't do that. Sweetie, that's not safe. Let's not do that. That's not a hot button. You don't have any long-standing history with that issue. Or if you do, you've already healed it. But the things that are just very tender to the touch, you can thank your kids because they're showing you what you get to work on. I hope that this module was helpful. I want you to know who you are in winter and who everyone in your family is in winter, so that when the winter storms come, you don't stay swirling forever and ever and ever, or even for a few moments, right? You know what it is. You know what winter is for your family. You know how people typically react, and you can build new systems to say, actually, we're ready to leave winter. We're ready to get out of this place. We don't want to stay here. We want to move on. And so that takes us to our next season, and I will see you there. Thanks so much.